Today, I wanted to discuss about the Almoravid Empire. Now, this is taught slightly in school, but they don't really go deeply into what it is. And broadly speaking, there's a lot of disinterest in Kenya about countries in the north of Africa because the assumption that we are given is that the countries of the north of Africa are non-African countries, which makes sense given the Arab invasion in the 700s. But at any rate, I wanted to talk about the Almoravid Empire because I think this is part of my hidden history series where I try to highlight certain issues coming up from history that we are not taught in school, and we all know it's for various nefarious reasons that the government avoids teaching us properly these aspects of African history. And well, I think all of us by now are aware that the curriculum that is used in Kenya is written in England. It's the Mzungu who writes our curriculum. We allow our enemies to train and teach our children. At any rate, let us jump into this Almoravid Empire. Now, the Almoravid Empire started in Outer Coast. This is in the south of the Sahara, and it spread from there, went north into what is called Morocco today and Algeria, and then crossed over into what is now Spain and Portugal. And it stretched from the river Senegal all the way to the south of France. The Almoravid Empire, when they teach it in school, they talk about it was a Muslim empire. And they use that as the common description. And they do that in order to hide the simple fact that these were Africans. So instead of using that it was an African empire, they used it was a Muslim empire to create confusion between Muslim and what we call Arab. So when you hear it's a Muslim empire, in your brain automatically you assign it to the Arabs. But the reality is the religion may have been Islam, but the people were African. Now, the Almoravid Empire was started by a man called Yahya ibn Ibrahim al-Lantuna. And he was born in Mauritania, the country that is called Mauritania today. And he was a chief in that tribe. The tribe was called the Lamtuna tribe. And his co-founder was called Abdallah ibn Yassin, who was the spiritual expert for the emir, for the chief of that tribe. Now, the chief of that tribe, Yahya ibn Ibrahim, died almost immediately. This was in 1040 when they started the empire or the kingdom. So in 1040, that emir died, and the spiritual expert became the new ruler. And he's called Abdallah ibn Yassin, and he was from the Gudala Baba tribes. Now, it is under him that the Almoravid Empire spread fast and went all the way from Senegal and all the way into what you call Morocco. What is interesting is that this is his portrait, and this is how he looked like. And you can clearly see he's a typical African. And this is the founder, the actual founder of the Almoravid Empire, which went on to conquer Spain and rule all the way to Europe. But this kind of information is never ever transmitted to students. In fact, in no history book in Kenya will you see this image. Never. They don't show Africans doing anything positive or any conquests. They usually like to portray us as people who didn't have historical movement at all, that we were just there seated waiting for all these people to come and do things. Now, Abdallah ibn Yassin was born in Morocco, and he ruled the Almoravid Empire from 1040 AD to 1059 or 1061 AD when he died. And by the time he died, that empire had spread all the way from River Senegal all the way to Morocco proper. When Ibn Yassin died, he was replaced by Abu Bakr al-Lamtuni. Now, Lamtuni refers to the tribe. When Abdallah ibn Yassin died, he was replaced by Abu Bakr. Now, Abu Bakr ruled for a very short time, and he was replaced by his cousin called Yusuf ibn Tashfin. Now, this is one of the more important Almoravid rulers because it is under Tashfin that the Almoravid Empire spread properly into Europe all the way to the south of France. Now, Yusuf Ibn Tashfin ruled from 1061 AD to 1106 AD. He defeated King Alfonso of Spain and spread the empire into Europe proper. Now, when you look at European history, they consider that time period as the time when they were being ruled by the Moors. Now, the Moors are basically Africans, and it is these Moors under the Islamic Caliphate that did a lot to educate Europeans. A lot of concepts that entered into Europe came through the Africans through that time period when they were being ruled by the Moors. For example, showering. Before that, a lot of Europeans would shower maybe once or twice in 1 year. It is the Moors who introduced the idea of showering every day and using perfume and things of that nature. And in fact, even the idea of going to school and graduating was something that was introduced into Europe proper by the Moors, which is why when you look at the graduation gown, the way it looks, it looks like the way they dress up in the Sahara, because it is from the Moors of the Sahara, those Berber tribes, that people would graduate. They introduced higher education into southern Europe, into Spain, and then the concept spread from there, which is why the graduation gown looks exactly like the dress that they wear in the Sahara Desert, even today. When you try to do research into this sort of information, you'll find that a lot of the information that is online is curated by Europeans and Westerners. And what they do is that they eliminate Africans completely from the history. So when you look at the images that they will show you of the rulers of the Almoravid Empire, they'll keep on showing you almost European images. You will never get to see, unless you dig really deep, you won't get to see the actual founders and the rulers of that empire. They totally try to whitewash history, eliminate Africans from all the history. So when you come and assert the correct history, a lot of them will accuse you of being Afrocentric. But really, you're not being Afrocentric, you're being truth-centric. And the truth manifests itself in interesting ways, because in Spain, even today, they have a festival called Moros versus Cristianos, simply to mean the Moors versus the Christians. Now, the word Moor it refers to basically black people. Okay, even if you go to places like Brazil, they'll call black people Moreno, things of that nature. So, and when you look at that festival, is when the Europeans, they call themselves the Christians, celebrate their defeat over the Moorish kingdoms that were ruling in the south of Spain. And they do this festival. It's a very big festival. And the way they do it, they reenact battles, they do all sorts of things, right? And they have parades in celebration of their victory. And they have, when they are doing the reenactment, they dress up. You can see in the images, they dress up in all these costumes, like the way the soldiers would dress up back in the day. And what is interesting, when you look at these pictures, you'll see that to represent the Moors, the Spaniards, the Europeans, have to paint their faces brown or black, simply acknowledging that the Moors were Africans. So that's how the truth sometimes come out, even when no one intended for the truth to come out, because they know the history. They know that Africans were ruling in Europe for more than 700 years. The Moorish kingdoms over South Europe continued for 700 continuous years. And this aspect of history has been almost completely erased, especially from our education system. So that by the time you're done with school, you're totally demoralized, because what the government does, what the Ministry of Education does, is to pedestalize the Europeans. They put them on a pedestal, whereby they become the movers and the shakers of history. And they relegate us to a position of observers of history. So that when you go through the education system in Kenya, you'll be told how Dr. Livingstone was a great man, right? You'll be told how Stanley was a great man. You'll be told all these stories of singular Europeans in Africa. In fact, the history that they teach in Kenya is the history of Europeans in Africa. So when you're talking to a Kenyan student, he knows more about Vasco da Gama than he knows about Ibn Yasin. So what the Ministry of Education does is to almost completely eliminate any achievements that Africans have done in the past. They overlook it, they obfuscate it, they hide it, they de-emphasize it, they refuse to mention it, they totally ignore it, which is why talk to any Kenyan about the pyramids. They know nothing. This is deliberate policy by the government, and it needs to stop, because that's why I decided to do this series, to cover certain historical topics, just to mention them so that people are aware the correct history, because the history is fake in school, as you very well know. The geography is also fake. You know that the map that they use in Kenyan schools is the fake map of the world. The world doesn't look like that, whereby they reduce Africa to 1/3 of its actual size, and they greatly exaggerate the size of Europe, and they greatly exaggerate the size of Russia. Yet Africa is massive, and it is in the front center of the world. So the geography is fake, the history is fake, the philosophy is fake. There's almost nothing truthful that they teach in school. Even the science that they teach you, when they claim that the earth is this size, it's rotating at 1,000 miles per hour on the equator, the distance from the earth to the sun is 93 million miles, the distance from the earth to the moon, I don't know, is 234,000 miles. All these are fake numbers. No one went there with a tape measure. All this is just fake. There's almost nothing real, but this is what they teach in school, because the education system in Kenya is predicated upon Western Freemasonry. So these are Masonic concepts. They have nothing to do with the truth of this world at all. I think I should mention something about the Berbers. In the Western description of the Berber tribes in North Africa, they will normally portray European-like looking people. Now, these are not the original Berbers. These are just the Europeans who invaded North Africa. You remember during the time of the Vandals, when the Western Roman Empire was collapsing, a lot of European tribes invaded North Africa. But the original Berbers are just normal Africa. In fact, if you go to Somalia, there's a place called Berbera, which is the same word as Berber. So the original Berbers are just ordinary Africans. And they have a very interesting headdress. You can see in the picture. And you can see the design of that headdress. That's where the French got the design for the Statue of Liberty, because the Statue of Liberty that is in New York, in the United States, was supposed to be of an African woman. But, given the racism in America at that time, they decided to change it into a European woman, which is why it looks like this Berber headdress. That is where they copied. A lot of concepts that you will see being promoted by the West are actually African concepts, and then they erase the African from the image, and they put themselves and present it as an original work, and it's not original. It's just cultural appropriation. So I just thought that was an interesting aside. It is Africans who are ruling in the south of Europe for all those hundreds of years. These were not pale Arabs ruling in Europe. These were Moors, and Moors simply refers to the skin color, which is black.